More and more companies are making net zero pledges in an effort to combat climate change. But what are they pledging to do exactly? What is net zero? Many companies are successfully cutting their own carbon emissions. But many others believe it's too expensive to get all the way down to zero. This is especially true for industries like aviation and cement and steel manufacturing, though innovations are making this easier. That's where the purchase of carbon offsets comes in. Companies finance projects claiming to cut emissions elsewhere to cancel out or offset some of their own. Offset the equivalent of what you haven't yet cut, and voila, your emissions hit net zero. The global carbon offset market is booming, and it's not hard to see why. Carbon offset companies are offering to plant trees that will cancel out air travel emissions, a portion of sales into research and development for new carbon removal technologies, and many other things, sometimes at a surprisingly low cost, that claim to cut the same amount of emissions another activity creates. But do they? Unfortunately, many offset programs sound great, but don't actually cut your emissions. Professor John Sterman at the MIT Sloan Sustainability Initiative says there is a better way. He devised guidelines to determine whether a proposed carbon offset really works, called the AVID Plus test. That's additional, verifiable, immediate, durable, plus helping meet other societal goals. Let's break it down. Additional. Does the offset reduce emissions that would not have been cut otherwise? Protecting a tract of forest is not additional if loggers simply cut nearby unprotected trees. Funding renewable energy projects that are profitable today is not additional because being profitable, they'd soon be built anyway. Verifiable. Can you verify that emissions actually fell? For forestry offsets, you must verify that the trees were actually planted and that they survive for the rest of the century and beyond. If you are capturing and storing carbon from power plants, you must verify that it remains underground. Verification is costly but necessary. Immediate. Emissions must drop soon after purchasing the offset. Your flight dumps carbon dioxide into the atmosphere right now, worsening warming from this day forth. But trees planted today won't grow enough to offset today's emissions for decades. Durable. Because carbon dioxide we emit today stays in the atmosphere for a century or more, we must offset an equivalent amount of emissions for at least that long. Trees planted today may be poached or harvested, or succumb to wildfire, disease, drought, or extreme weather, all made more likely by climate change. Similarly, some carbon dioxide pumped underground could escape. And finally, the plus. To be legitimate, proposed offsets must meet all 4 of the AVID criteria. If several proposed offsets do, then we should pick those that multi-solve. Offsets meeting all AVID criteria should advance other worthy goals in addition to their climate benefits, such as job creation, poverty reduction, or improved health. Tree planting is commonly done by establishing monocultures of fast-growing species instead of mimicking the natural forests that spur recreation, hunting, fishing, and tourism, or support traditional ways of life for indigenous people. Legitimate carbon offsets must ace the AVID Plus test. Miss the mark on one, and your claimed offset doesn't help limit climate change. So, do AVID Plus offsets exist? Yes. Here's one example: energy efficiency retrofits for low-income housing. Few low-income households can finance the work themselves, and since most are renting and pay their utility bills, their property owners lack the incentive to finance it. Such retrofits are therefore additional. The energy savings are verifiable from utility bills. Projects only take about a year, so emissions reductions are nearly immediate. Good retrofits can significantly extend building life, so benefits are durable. Plus, retrofits create jobs, reduce energy bills, and improve health. The best way to reach net zero is still just to reach zero, cutting emissions in the first place. However, if we are going to offset, we need to do it responsibly.